5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050, WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and it is that time of the show, the MGoBlog Roundtable. Every single Thursday, we break down things relative, or all the things that have to do with Michigan athletics, and it sometimes sort of transitions into pro discussions like it will today. We're talking about the NFL draft, but we start out talking about Michigan recruiting with the MGoBlog crew, starting out with the man that started it all at MGoBlog, Mr. Brian Cook. Brian, how are you?
I'm good.
We have Seth Fisher. How you doing this morning, Seth?
Hey, Sam, reading a lot of your articles this week.
And then, of course, recruiting is on fire.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have one Mr. Craig Ross, who is interested in trolling me today for some reason.
I'm not trolling you. I just have a different point of view, even though I concede it may be ignorant. I just want to point out that Brian Cook is fresh off the ballet.
Really?
And he's expanding his horizons. He's become a ballet fan, maybe opera next, who knows? But it's good to see that Brian's, worldview isn't quite as limited as it used to be.
Okay, I didn't know you're expanding your horizons there, Brian.
You go on vacation, you do some things that you wouldn't do otherwise. What happens in Vienna stays in Vienna.
All right.
I mean, he's always like slot receivers, so I mean, there's not a huge like when Dennis Norfleet to ballet, like he's already most of the way there.
Okay.
Well, let's jump into Michigan recruiting, which this week picked up two more top 247 players. We can get your takes on both of those guys, but I'm curious your takes on the reaction because Michigan vaulted to number 1 in the recruiting rankings according to 24/7 Sports, and Ohio State fans stroked out collectively. I mean, they just went completely nuts that Michigan had the number 1, trying to just downplay it, justify it, something to explain how Michigan could have the number 1 recruiting class in the country. It's like it was the last stand, Brian. First they're losing on the field, now they're starting to lose in recruiting, and of course they're losing their minds as a result.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is they're going through it, and I've been there, and I'm like,
right.
So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of coping, and I'm just glad that somebody else is having to do the coping. I mean, as regards the class, I mean, it's obviously not going to finish number 1. Bama and Georgia are going to hop up there when they collect their bounty of 5 stars. But the notable thing to me is they got 14 kids in this class, and the only guys who aren't 4 stars are Ben Roebuck, who's literally the first tackle who's not a 4-star, Manuel Beagle, who just picked up offers from Penn State and Georgia and is the kind of like camp sleeper that you like to see as a 3-star, and then a guy who's probably going to be a fullback. Everybody else is in that like 400 to 200 range to 100 range, where you get a lot of good players, especially on the offensive line. And then you have some top end. And I don't know if Michigan's going to be able to reel in some of these 5 stars that they're still recruiting to stick at the very top of the rankings. But, for Michigan, this is how they build their program, right? They build their program on guys from the Midwest who are not going to be, your Texas A&M 5 stars, guys who are good character guys and guys who want to develop. And I think in terms of not like a class for any school, but a class for Michigan, this is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, the notion of Ohio State fans losing their minds is either A, redundant, or B, a false predicate. It's one of the two, or both. But beyond that, I would say, yeah, this looks really nice. It looks really good. It looks like a good recruiting class, but who knows? I mean, if you look in the last 5 or 6 years, I think Michigan's lowest rated recruiting class, I think that was 2018 or 19, was the best. And so, I don't want to, lay a whole lot on recruiting rankings because I'm not a big believer. But yeah, I mean, from what I can see at this moment, it looks like the recruiting is going well, and it makes me very happy that upsets Ohio State fans.
Seth?
I mean, I'm going to disagree with you guys. Ohio State fans are absolutely reasonable to be freaking out right now. They should be upset about this. They should be, because what Michigan has right now, the reason why Michigan's looking like number one, and yes, get your screenshots in now, but they have the class that Ohio State usually has at this point. What do they have? They have the 5-star quarterback that they targeted at the beginning of the cycle, right? That's the guy they wanted. They went and got him. He's leading that thing, right? They have the best running back in the Midwest, right out of Ohio. They've got the best tight end in the country. They've got an offensive line class that's pretty much built at this point. You know, you add one more tomorrow, hopefully, and then you can add, you know, and then you can take one more elite guy. Like, that's where Ohio State normally is at this point on defense, on offense. And on defense, you know, they're getting names that everyone knew for a long time, except for Beagle, who now has a Georgia offer. Like, that's what an Ohio State class usually looks like at this point. And that's not what Ohio State's class actually looks like at this point. They've kind of settled for a couple guys. They're kind of circling around some other things. Their receivers are good. They got their receivers again. But Michigan is not just taking it to Ohio State. They're taking it to Ohio State for the guys that Ohio State normally gets.
I have a question for Sam on this. And how come centers are always either unrated or underrated? I mean, Olawatimi, I don't think was any kind of, had any kind of rating. Our last guy, the big guy who's going to medical school, he was a walk-on. Yeah.
Ruiz was a top 50 recruit.
Ruiz.
Patrick Kugler was a highly rated center too.
Okay.
He's a 5-star.
So those two guys, do you know what those two guys did? They played center in high school. Do you know what most great offensive linemen who are good in high school do? Play tackle. No one can waste a guy like that out at center, right? Like, most high schools just don't have that. If you have a guy who's that into football and who's that good and can move around and can push people around, you put that guy out at tackle and you run behind him all day.
What about this? The guy I hear they're getting is named Jake Guarna, who's a center.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not a particularly highly regarded guy, but Michigan seems to really want him.
Yeah,
well, it's the Wonderlic stuff, right?
Okay.
Like, if you look at NFL Wonderlic scores, like they get lower the farther you get away from center.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of guys who are physical specimens and can be good offensive linemen, but don't have the processing to be a center. And so the kind of things that centers have to be really good at are often things that recruiting sites aren't that great at tracking.
Okay.
You know, like if a running back is breaking a tackle, that's pretty obvious. If a guy's running a 4.3, that's pretty obvious. If a guy's 6'8", that's pretty obvious. But, you know, if a guy's like, okay, I'm identifying this blitz and I'm shifting the protection so that our line picks it up and our quarterback doesn't get plastered, that's really hard to pick up. So I just kind of feel like, you know, centers are one of those positions where you can take rankings often with a grain of salt. If you do get a guy who is a highly rated center, that's probably a pretty good sign. But in terms of like what positions correlate the best with the recruiting ranking, I would put center close to the bottom.
Okay.
You know, cornerback is way up there, wide receiver is way up there, but there's
nose tackle, DT.
Yeah, it's just hard for people to project something where it's so subtle, and you really just need to get inside a guy's head. So, yeah, I feel like whatever Sharon Moore wants to do at center, I'm good with.
Right. I'm right there with
His
you.
track record is there.
I remember having a discussion last year about this time because NIL was it's like dropping a bomb in the middle of a recruiting, right? You're telling all these teams have been cheating that there's a way that they can do it. They can get what they were doing illegally. They get it done legally now. So could Michigan recruit at a top 10 level in the NIL era was the open question. And, you know, this cycle would be, last cycle would go a long way towards giving us an answer and any possible adjustments they would have to make if it wound up being the case they didn't. And so I think it was 17 or 18 they wound up being ranked as in last year's recruiting cycle. And we've seen some noteworthy changes that I think have all been impactful. One of them was Harbaugh. The Harbaugh question was answered quicker. He dealt with it directly with Jaden Davis. That was a huge deal. You went and you really have to fortify, kind of like John Beeline did. This was kind of my John Beeline analogy. He went and had a staff where every single guy was an excellent relationship builder, a good to excellent relationship builder. Wasn't pulling any dead weight along the way. And so we saw in the offseason, you swap out Matt Weiss and George Hilo, and George wasn't a zero. George did a good job, but you replaced him with two-time recruiter of the year in Chris Partridge, and you go and get Kirk Campbell, who absolutely is night and day difference as your quarterback recruiting your most important position. You get that locked up early on. Your 5-star quarterback. They did a much better job of getting guys on campus in this winter and spring cycle. That was a night and day difference as well. You add all those things up, guys, and you have a recipe for a class that I think will finish in the top 5. So I say recruiting rankings are a guide, not the gospel. I don't think you should be like, oh, we got to have the number 1 recruiting class every single year. If you can have a top 5, top 10 class, a couple of years in a row, and then you fall outside and have excellent player development, that's a good enough formula. If it's just about the player development, though, and you're just about developing guys, I think what you're going to have is ebbs and flows. You won't be in contention every year. It'll be every blue moon. I think where Michigan is setting itself up for is to be in contention every year now with the dynamic that they have going on.
Yeah, especially with what they were able to do in the portal. So I know going into the NIL, I was pretty optimistic, and then last year everybody was like, But I just think Michigan needed a little time to ramp up, right? Because Texas A&M had that infrastructure in place. Alabama had that infrastructure in place. Most of those places had those. They just seamlessly transitioned, and now it's above board.
Right.
And Michigan just didn't have that. I mean, so they just had a little bit of chaos because Harbaugh does have a lot of chaos, but they've kind of established themselves as the top dog in the Big Ten, and they're recruiting like it. And I mean, you got to tell me, Sam, like if they're going to finish in the top 5, they probably need at least one more 5-star. Who's it going to be?
Well, look, and this will make Ohio State fans stroke out. I think they have a good chance at Aaron Scott. I think they have a good chance at Aaron Scott.
That's good. I'll get to update my map.
So, I'll get into this. I mean, they have some ties to him that will help. I'm not calling it a done deal, but you remember back in the days of Trotwood Madison when Michigan would go into Trotwood and grab guys, and those guys weren't really even looking at Ohio State. Now, I mean, did Ohio State want all those guys? No, I don't think they didn't want Mike McCray until the end. I don't think they recruited Roy Roundtree, but
Roundtree we stole from Purdue. Remember that was the whole snake oil and
Yeah.
But you had the dude Shaw, the running back that came in there, and Brandon Moore.
Mike Shaw
And Brandon Moore came from there. Coach Mo Douglas, Trotwood Madison. He's Aaron Scott's coach.
Oh,
Yeah. It kind of gives you a little, kind of makes you think there a little bit, right? So I'm not saying that to say that it's going to get it done. I'm saying you're dealing in a recruitment that is like, you're not gonna face an obstacle in the school, and that has largely been a problem in Ohio. The biggest of which is you're getting beat down by Ohio State. But now that you're beating them, the obstacle is, can you get through the barrier that often is at the front door when you're walking into high schools at Ohio for guys that Ohio State wants? Well, this is one of those where you don't have to deal with that.
Well, go ahead, Brian.
They got a number of edge guys who are really highly ranked who they're in on, and I wouldn't be surprised if they managed to rake in one of those guys, and you get a couple more of real top end guys, and this looks like like one of Michigan's best classes in living memory. Because there's just, I mean, I mentioned the 3 guys who are 3 stars, right? There's not a whole lot of like flyers or guys who you're just kind of hoping come through, and that's always. I don't mind the occasional flyer because you get a lot of good players if you can really ID, and Michigan can do that particularly at tight end, but they don't have to this year because they got pre-scored in state and they already picked up Hogan Hansen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pre-scoring, man. Pre-scoring is a big pickup. Pre-scoring gives me TJ Hawkinson vibes.
What what about Jared Smith? Is he an edge or is he a 3 tech? He seemed a little small or
Really
short.
depends on what his body does. I
Okay.
think he very he's 265 right now. I was talking to Brian Doan
Okay.
about this.
All right.
He thinks he'll be 3 tech size and that
Okay.
he won't be an edge long term. So
Mhm.
but he thinks he's physical enough. He's to be that. It's just a matter of adding the weight. So we'll see in the grand scheme of things. His brother's an edge though.
Right.
Yeah.
But it sounds like his brother's a Notre Dame lean. Is that correct?
I don't know if I trust that.
Well,
You don't
there
trust
were
that?
some yeah, man, no. So Notre Dame, they thought that they were trending for Jared Smith, and then very
Mhm.
quickly here in the last couple of weeks, they came off of that and they started pushing for Bryant Young really, really hard. Bryant Young, not Bryant Young, Bryce
Bryant.
Young, son of Bryant
Okay.
Young,
Mhm.
right down in Charlotte Christian, and suddenly they started trending with those Christian kids. I think that had a lot to do with what's going on. It maybe not. Maybe it wasn't in direct reaction to that, but I think it factored into the push that we see going on with Bryce Young right now. So I say that to say if you weren't trending with Jared Smith, I don't see how you're gonna trend with Jacob Smith. There was some Kentucky talk there, but Jared said he's going to be recruiting his brother from Michigan. I like Michigan's chances there.
When's the last time that a set of twins went to a different school?
Right.
Like this is the one situation where I'm like, oh, that's a package deal.
Right.
That's a really good question. I mean, I can't recall that.
Texas was sure it was going to happen with the Greens, and Michigan was like, "No, we're taking that."
Yeah.
That's what happens usually, though. It's like, the Twins you see the recruiting articles, and they're like, "Oh, we'll see different schools," and like one of them starts getting a little bit more recruited than the other, and then some schools like, "No, we want both of you guys," and if that's UCF, then they both go to UCF. Like that's how it happens.
But usually they commit together.
That's
And-
true. This is already weird.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
already a little bit on the edge of the scale because that's not what's going on here.
This is a bit of a weird family, and I say it in a good way, by the
Okay.
way. But like when you
All right.
start reading about that they've lived in Japan, the they had
Yeah.
a station in the Carolinas now.
He's an lifetime
Marine.
Army
He's
guy.
a Marine.
Guy. Okay.
Yeah, and then
Careful, Craig.
Carol.
do not want to. Don't get them mad at us, please.
Yeah.
Not them. Yeah, and then the kids are going to school in Connecticut, and his quotes are like, "Yeah, I try to get it through to them." And this is when they were 15, so like, take a grain of salt. But like, I'm trying to get through to them. They got to work out and they got to focus on football because they got a real opportunity, and they just want to be kids and like go swim in the lake every day. And like the dad is on it. Like they had them visiting Alabama 4 times. They had them visiting Georgia 3 times. Like this is. They know how to use the system. They know how to like prepare these guys. They had them ranked right at the beginning of the rankings. Like this is a family that knows how the entire system works, and they've the school that they went to has like one of the best physical training facilities out there. They were held back a grade, so they're a little older than most of the kids in their grade too, which also speaks to like whether he can grow into a 3 tech. I think that he's already 18 years old, so it might not. That might not be happening. That might have been one of the reasons I think he looked at Michigan, because Michigan's like, well, come look at our Mike Morris tape, man.
Yeah, man. And listen, all those schools that you mentioned, I mean, he had offers.
Yeah, he had offer. Did he have an offer from Georgia and Bama? I mean, I saw that at 247, but I don't know if that was real or not. I know Notre Dame wanted him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't speak to whether they were sincere in because some schools make offers that aren't committable. I don't know if they were playing that game or not.
Yeah.
I just know he he listed those as offers.
Okay.
I mean, he was
And-
at Alabama and got the Alabama offer. Both of them did. Got the Alabama offer with the picture of Saban at the same time. Like usually what Alabama does is they'll offer you, like with Loveland, right? Well, they send him an offer, and then they want you to come and work out for them so they can get your measurements and stuff like that. And then they come in, and then your offer is committable. I think these guys had a committable offer. But the other thing is sometimes Alabama says, okay, you're here, we're offering you. Are you in or out? And
if the
if you
offers
want to
were
look
fake,
around, then they're not going to stick around right for you.
and if they weren't committed, if they were fake, I mean, that would come up. You
Mhm.
wouldn't see the back. I mean, you got Tennessee, you got Georgia with the offer,
Mhm.
Texas offers, Michigan's on, Notre Dame's offer. That the offer list is too gaudy for all of that to just be, they're embellishment. And I
Okay.
don't think that's the case here. I think Michigan went up and Mike Elston did a well of a job growing his connection with those guys. I think it's going to reap dividends, not just with Jarrett, but with Jacob as well. And we'll see where things go. I said this would be a spring summer cycle that will fortify this class. It won't slide out of the top 10. I think it'll be top 5. And you look at where they sit with top 247 guy like Channing Goodwin, top 247 guy like Jeremiah Beasley, top 247 guy like Aaron Childs, should be top 247 guy Amarion Stewart. I think they lead for all of those guys.
And is wide receiver the primary need spot right now from your vision for Stewart and Goodwin? I mean, is that or Ship? I don't know what their deal is with him, but I mean, is that would
Yeah,
you
they got to
view
get.
that?
I think they're targeting 3 receivers in this class at
Mhm.
least, and I think they are far and away the leader for Channing Goodwin.
Goodwin.
And I think that they are a significant leader for Amarion Stewart as well. I think, this is one of those instances where I think their ranking or their view of a guy is different from the analyst view. I think Amarion Stewart's at the top of their receiver board and has been since he came back in July and lit up that, the camp, the barbecue at the big house day. And that from that point on, it was like, this is the guy. This is the guy at the top of the board for this class, and they've been pursuing him as such. So
He's transferring high schools now. He's not at Bolingbrook anymore, right?
he's at Kenwood because the coach at Bolingbrook retired. I can't remember the guy's name. I think he had a stroke. And so he moved over to Kenwood, and he's going to play his senior year there. And you hope that reaps dividends with Marquise Lightfoot, who is an absolute beast over there. So if you're trending with Amarion, and hope maybe that gives you some influence in your edge recruiting too, because I think he's probably, between Bama's high on him now, SC is in there, Ohio State's emphasizing Lightfoot, Michigan was one of the early adopters, and hope that gives them some more attraction there. But that's an uphill battle with Lightfoot. With Stewart, on the other hand, yeah, they're the leaders in the clubhouse for that one.
Good.
I wonder if the whole NIL thing, because one of the things I noticed is that most of the other classes are a lot smaller right now than they usually are at this time of year. And I think that the only thing that's really changed is NIL, right? Like that's another piece that families have to figure out.
Well, and the portal.
So,
I mean, you
yeah.
have schools saving slots for.
Yeah.
Why would I go get a incoming freshman when I can go wait to see what develops in the portal and grab from there, at least in that early portal cycle, especially.
There's 46 guys at Colorado, for example, or whatever it is. Half of Texas A&M's class from last year.
What did you guys? Before we get to the break, I guess we need to let's touch on Michigan's portal entries here. R.J. Moten, Nakai Hill-Green, A.J. Henning. Just your reactions to those guys saying they're out.
Well, when you get the post-spring portal out, I think that's kind of an indication of what's happening on the depth chart.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think Henning was thinking that he'd go into this year and he'd be a bigger piece of the offense. Probably didn't look like it was happening, so he's out. R.J. Moten was like, I started 10 games last year. I should, maybe I'll surge back into the lead, and that didn't happen. And the same thing with Nakai Hill-Green, who was injured all last year, went through spring, reportedly isn't all the way back, and all of a sudden Michigan's linebacker room is pretty full because you got Rolder coming off a freshman year where he played and looked good. You have Hausman transferring in, and you have 2 returning starters. So if he's not even on the 2 deep, then it might be time to pull the ripcord. So I think Henning's a loss because he was established himself as a very good returner, and he's a good guy for your gadget plays. But I honestly didn't think either of the other 2 guys was going to play very much next year, and so this is the era where if that's the case and you're 3 years in, then it's time to hit the bricks.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, it sounded like Hill-Green still isn't healthy and still has some physical issues. Michigan has improved the linebacker room. So while he was he was a promising player a year ago, right now his situation's a bit problematic. So it's understandable. I'm not sure if it hurts Michigan that much. Henning does hurt, I think, primarily as a gadget guy, as Brian said, a punt returner. So I know last week somebody said, is Cole Cabana going to return punts? And one of us,
and Sam's making that face at us the whole time.
And one of us said yes, and the other 2 were like, "That's stupid." Well, maybe it's not so stupid. Maybe he will be.
Talking to the insider here, yeah. But I mean, with Hill-Green, he's going to Charlotte. So I mean that when you see where they're ending up, and I know Pogge's putting together a hell of a class there, but yeah. But when you see where they're ending up, you can understand. And I mean, at the end of last year, like Moton was basically unplayable. Like there was an entire drive that Purdue got in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I mean, you got Zeke Berry coming up. That you're gonna, and the rest of his class is coming up behind them now. Dent's back with the team. Like there's other talent at safety that's gonna want to poke through, and you already have and Page's not going to be moving.
Well,
right?
Page passed him, and Moore is a star. So.
And Quentin Johnson, who the guys keep talking about. Sounds like he was definitely battling for that number 3 spot, if he hadn't already surpassed. But put it this way, they played Quentin Johnson in the playoff game.
Yeah,
right?
they did. So yeah, I think. I mean, I was a little disappointed with his season, and I don't know exactly why that happened. It seemed like he went backwards a little bit. I don't know if he was hurt or just having some issues or what. But yeah, I didn't think any of those were all depth chart transfers to me, where it's just like we don't have snaps for you.
Yeah, I agree. All right, that is a great point to take a break, come back on the other side, and talk about the guys. The Michigan guys in the NFL draft, a couple of whom might have their name called tonight in the first round, not out of the realm of possibility that you see some winged helmets, flash across the screen. We shall see. We'll also talk about my Leos and who they're going to grab. Craig is already trying to sabotage our draft.
No, I'm a Lions fan. I'm not trying to sabotage that. Anything that bad can happen to the Browns, but I want good things for the Lions.
We got to get to a break. Back on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK8, the ticket.
Still don't understand how you end up a Lions fan. It's like a fan of a Big Ten team being like, you know what, I'm gonna go with Rutgers from now on.
Well, it was
the Browns. That's not.
And I would still be a Browns fan, but they just drove me over the cliff with Deshaun Watson after Johnny Manziel. I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I said, I live here. My friends are Lions fans. I can be a Lions fan.
So what do you guys think of this talk about CJ Stroud having like the worst, S2 score?
Yeah. The process.
Yeah. They make it sound like he didn't do anything to dispel the notion. I mean, the test company tried to make it sound like some of the scores reported were fake. He made it sound like, yeah, he said, what'd he say? I'm a football player, not a test taker.
Yeah.
That's not a guy who thinks
they asked him who you modeled your game after. And of all the human beings to say that he modeled his game after, he chose Mike Vick.
Not just Mike Vick, Mike Vick and Deshaun Watson.
And Watson.
Yeah, that
Like
shows.
every time he opens his mouth, all I hear is "Don't draft me." Because he was like, the 2 games against Michigan don't define my Ohio State career. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Own it. Own it. You slapdick. God.
Here's the thing, man. I have long been one of the staunchest critics of this guy. Like, to avoid him at all costs. Not just his track record against Michigan, looking like he wasn't ready to deal with that kind of adversity. Just a track record of Ohio State quarterbacks in the pros in general. His over history has not been good, but
He looked great against Georgia, though, didn't he?
He did. He did.
I mean, he looked tremendous against Georgia, and that wasn't a weak defense. You see, if I'm still in the spot, if the Lions can take Richardson or Stroud, take them. Because unless they're going to trade up into the early draft next year, I don't see how they.
Greg was hanging out on 420. You were hanging out last week this time, right? You were on
No.
420. Yeah, you were. And still feeling the effects of 420 a week later. Anthony Richardson, Craig, he's a 53% passer.
I know.
He's 1-0. You can't compare. They compare him to Cam. Cam single-handedly led a team to the national championship. Lamar Jackson was a Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, these comparisons to me are ridiculous. He's nowhere close to those guys. He is the ultimate project.
He is a project.
If I'm trying to put my team over the top, I'm not drafting a guy that I'm not going to play for 2 years at least.
Yeah. So how do you see the draft going? 3 of the first 4 teams need quarterbacks, right?
You could, if you're Houston, yes, you need a quarterback, but do you like any of these guys enough?
I don't know.
To take a quarterback right now versus if you think Will Anderson's a star or you think Tyree Wilson's a star, you take one of those guys and you're going to suck this year. So now you're in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes or maybe the J.J. McCarthy sweepstakes. It's supposed to be a better QB draft next year.
Yeah, it is. But you're going to have Wilson's going to be gone and Anderson's going to be gone, I think. So now you're sort of stuck with a quarterback.
No,
reaching on a corner.
You're not reaching. You're
reaching on.
You watch Devin Witherspoon. See,
I watched him.
There we go.
This is where the Buckeyes. This is why they were coming after me when I said, "Look, you can't play like Illinois. You don't have dogs like Illinois has. You certainly don't have coaching like Illinois has. Yeah. But Illinois has some dogs in the secondary." And Devin Witherspoon, he's a good player.
Back on radio in about 20 seconds, guys.
Can you somehow trade down and still get Witherspoon? You don't think so? You think he's going to be gone in the first 7?
I mean, unless Tennessee is jumping up for Will Levis or something like that, it's the only scenario I could see where you go down all
right, guys, stand by. Coming back on radio. Stand by.
At that point, it's not going to be a big deal.
All right, we're back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
We are back on the Michigan Insiders Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTKA.com. Before we get back to the MGoBlog Roundtable, I want to remind you, if you're in the market for a new vehicle, get on board at Brian Ford because they take great care of you there. And this month, it's time for their 2022 F-150 blowout sale through May 1st. You can lease the truck that's been voted the #1 truck in America for over 46 years in a row. F-150 for as low as $394 a month with $3,500 down. Plus, they have 2023 Edges for as little as $279 a month, also with only $3,500 down. It's a great time to get on board with Brian Ford. Craig Ross, it's a great time to get on board with passing on a quarterback if you're the Detroit Lions in this draft.
Sam, I just don't see how you can pass on a quarterback when you're going to have to pay rag arm quarterback $50 million next year.
You won't have to pay him $50 million. You talking about per year? No, you won't.
Yeah.
No, you won't. He's not going to get Jalen Hurts' contract. He's not going to get Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, these guys are averaging $50 million a year.
Okay, don't you have to have a quarterback on this team Are you going to get by with Jared Goff and nothing
Yes,
else,
you
which
are.
is what they have right now?
Yes, you are. He happened to have quarterbacked the team to a Super Bowl. It may be. I mean, he did do that, right? I mean, maybe I missed that. And
Yeah,
he did something that Matthew Stafford never did. He elevated the team around. Who did you look at last year heading into the season as, hey, man, that's a GOAT, that's a star receiver, right? I mean, Hawkinson, hey, he's a good tight end. I never
Okay.
thought he was a guy on the level of a Kelsey or any of
No,
the other top tight
no,
ends in the
you're
game.
correct.
And so he took those guys. He helped establish Amon-Ra St. Brown as a guy. He elevated the talent around him in ways that Matthew Stafford never did. He's 28 years old. He's already quarterbacked the team to a Super Bowl. You're probably going to have to pay him in the mid-30s, 35 million. That's a bargain for a quarterback, a good quarterback in the NFL these days. And you look around, I was looking at the NFL quarterback rankings on NFL.com this morning. They had him at number 8 in the league. So, I mean, you're gonna throw away a top 10 quarterback in his prime that's at a reasonable rate, relatively speaking. No, not for a project, not for CJ Stroud, who's looking like he's gonna be on the board, and certainly not for Anthony Richardson. I don't even know why we have to have this discussion. Man, come on, man. Get on board, man. Get on board.
We're not having this discussion. We should be having a discussion about
best
Devin
quarterback available. That's
because what did the Lions do right before the draft? They dumped Jeff Okudah, right?
Well, that
was going to be their next cornerback. So now they need a cornerback anyway.
But they dumped Jeff Okudah for like a 5th round pick.
Because he sucked.
Right.
Exactly.
It's not like they were like, oh, this is our building block that we're building around. Like they had already moved on from that guy.
Yeah, and I'm saying that because he got my man Aubrey Pleasant fired.
All right.
And so it is his fault. So I think, good riddance to Jeff Okudah.
I am not a Lions fan.
There is no more opposite kind of cornerback than from Okudah than Witherspoon.
But listen,
you're going the exact opposite direction.
Listen to me.
You're going to Witherspoon.
Listen to me.
Okay,
if you pass up on a guy whose college career was basically Ndamukong Suh at 6 because he was a little fat at pro day, you deserve everything that you are ever going to get as a Lions fan.
That's not it. So
are you talking about
Jalen Carter?
Listen.
Everyone agrees he's the best player in the draft.
He is the best player in this draft. There is no question, Brian. You are spot on. He can be a game wrecker. But I've heard it from when McShay threw it out there at first. I was like, man, come on, man. Why are you hating on this guy's? Yeah, he's in the draft. Leave him alone. But then a
little reckless driving at the combine. That's just spice factor.
Wait, he was going like 90 in a school zone or something.
I mean, that's just how he lives. Fast. That's how he plays. Fast.
Right. And I'm not making light of his driving issues. I was even willing to, in the drag racing thing, as tragic as that decision was to participate in, I was like, okay, if that's an anomaly, I'll look past it. But then, like Craig is talking about, you got him doing 90 and a 35 at another time. But the other thing that jumps out at me was Todd McShay's original report, where he was like, I'm hearing this dude is not a great guy in the locker room. Like, the team doesn't like him. This is just not. And people ridiculed him. And I was among them because McShay just threw it out there as this nebulous thing I'm just hearing. But since then, others have started to say the same thing. And I was talking to my guy at the SEC Network, who is talked to that staff and talked to people around there. He was like, man, I'm just hearing that this is not a great locker room guy. He's got to be in a locker room with a good veteran presence to really corral that. And then came McShay's commentary this week. So if I'm going to ridicule him for not getting specific with his critique, with his sourcing, I got to highlight when he does call it out, when he does give his sources. He said, quote, I've got one page of 7 different sources I've talked to, and it includes quotes from the coaching staff. Talk about the coaching staff in Georgia. It includes quotes from the coaching staff. Let's just put it this way. As good as Jalen Carter was, and as important as he was to the last 2 years, winning national championships, I don't think there's a lot of people in Athens that are crying that Jalen Carter's leaving town. Now, he goes on to talk about it. That doesn't mean that he can't be a really good, fantastic pro. I just think he has to be in a certain kind of locker room.
Okay.
With very, very strong leadership.
Who's
on
he gonna
defense.
who's he gonna line up next to? Aiden Hutchinson.
In his
Perfect.
second year, though, Brian.
Doesn't matter. Aiden Hutchinson is a golden god, and he will get that man straightened out. Where did
So we
Randy
got-
Moss go?
The
Where did
Lions-
Where did Randy Moss go?
But Randy Moss had Chris Carter. Chris Carter was a veteran, established guy in the NFL at that point.
All right,
in time.
just find somebody. It doesn't matter. Where did Warren Sapp go? What are we talking about here? I mean, we're
Hey,
talking
man.
about we're talking about taking a quarterback, and all quarterbacks are gambles. This guy's a gamble,
Well, I don't.
but
think
he's
Devin-
also like going to be the best defensive tackle in the league for 10
Yeah,
years if
he-
he works out.
Yeah, but see, here's my if that was my biggest hole by far, and I didn't have other holes that I needed to fill
It is a hole
that
Like,
I could fill in
no,
a
'cause,
very
like-
very significant way.
because like you got defensive tackles, fine. You don't have a game record. Like that's a hole. I don't care who you got there, unless it's Aaron Donald. You got a hole because you don't have Aaron Donald, and this guy could be Aaron Donald. He could be Ndamukong Suh. He could be that guy. And to me, that's worth the risk. Yeah, he likes driving cars fast in inappropriate situations. He'll grow out of that. He'll be fine.
You convince me. No quarterback.
I don't think he's going to be there
Jalen
in
Carter,
anyway.
you convinced
But
me.
all I heard, Sam, is that when Michigan goes to recruit against Georgia, I'm taking that sheet of paper and being like, "Hey, man, look how they badmouth their own guys at the draft. Did you see this?"
I thought the same thing. I thought the same thing. But no, listen. I think Devin Witherspoon is going to be a shutdown corner in the NFL. I mean, there was a Pro Football Focus stat where they said he had more breakups. That M Live wrote about it. They said he had
more
more
breakups than defenses, I think.
than targets or something.
Yeah.
And it was just this insane stat. You know he's physical. You know he's coached well. We went over that during the season. That's what I was trying to tell those Buckeyes. Like, man, they get the scheme. The scheme preparation is outstanding for those. I don't know what it'll be moving forward, but it's great right now. And then the Lions already have experience with a guy from Illinois who came in and was big time. I mean, it was a steal getting Kirby Joseph in the third round. Coming from Illinois, he was a receiver. They turned him into a DB. He comes in and intercepts Aaron Rodgers 3 times last year. I mean, this dude, and now you're getting an even better product from that same defense.
So what you're saying, Sam, is the Lions should load up with a bunch of guys from Illinois.
The secondary, absolutely. Hell
Second-
yeah.
okay.
Now it's
Hey,
now
man,
it's Purdue.
we saw Devin Witherspoon play Michigan,
Yeah.
and that guy is
good.
the dude. No, I mean
Yeah.
that's like he's one of the best corners I've seen in college in a long time.
So
Like,
now you're
first off.
going back to Witherspoon over Jalen Carter?
No, I'm saying you got to take Jalen Carter, but if Jalen Carter's gone, Witherspoon's a fine pick.
Okay. I mean, I think Carter might go to Seattle because Pete Carroll isn't going to get so worked up over
Exactly.
stuff that other teams
Pete,
made.
Pete Carroll's gonna be like, oh yeah, I got this. I'll race you. I'm
Yeah,
Pete
man.
Carroll. I'm
Listen.
85 years old. I don't care.
If I didn't hear it from guys I talked to in the SEC, I'd be right there. I was trying because I think he's the best player on the board, but it's just too risky for where the Lions are. You got to get a guy who you're confident.
the
What are you
Lions
trying
don't
to
do
do?
that.
Are you trying to make the playoffs?
The
Are you
Lions
trying to
don't
win a
do-
Super Bowl, Sam?
They don't do that. They came in like the very first thing they said was like, "We're going to be a locker room guys program here." Like that's
right.
what the franchise is all about.
That's
is locker
fine.
room
You can
guys.
be locker room guys, and then you got the one guy who's, Lex Luthor with super
Devin
powerful
Witherspoon
arms.
is exactly the kind of guy that they draft. He's exactly the kind of guy that they need. It's the one position that they really need. And the Lions want to win next year, not like develop a guy or take a risk. They want a guy who's like, okay, now both of our cornerback spots are they just spent a ton of money in the secondary this offseason. They only have those guys
I mean, it's
for a
not
few
like
years.
Jalen Carter is dropping out of the first round. It said that the Bears will take him if he's there, or
Yeah,
the
nice,
Eagles.
Yeah.
So, it's not a reach or anything. He's going. So, if he's there when the Lions pick, you should pick the best guy in the draft and ignore
Well,
these,
you're
ignore
right
these
about that.
quarterbacks. All these quarterbacks
Yeah.
are going to be failures. They're
Yeah.
terrible.
All of them?
All of them.
I predict at least one of them will be okay.
No, like one
One
of
of them
them
will
okay.
be one of them will be better than Goff.
One
But
overall is gonna be fine.
if you're spending 1 overall on CJ Stroud,
Oh God.
Now,
Yeah.
the consensus seems to be that it's going to be Bryce Young.
Yeah.
well, I mean, but like, I mean, CJ Stroud, every time he opens his mouth, it's like, stop talking. Just
Here's the thing about quarterbacks:
stop.
like 50% of the time that those guys get drafted, I think like half the good quarterbacks have been ruined by the NFL. They go to bad teams. By definition, you have to be bad to get the first overall pick anyway, and then they get bad offensive lines, and it's like it takes a while to develop into a really good NFL quarterback. And I think the ones who are the guys that they have are not going to transcend the franchises that are in position to draft a quarterback right now.
I just don't want some guy who like had Ohio State receivers, played against Purdue most of the time. And we saw what happened when CJ Stroud got pressure against Michigan. You know, he throws off his back foot and he's not nearly as effective, and he puts up. And he got the one game against Georgia where he's actually running.
Mm-hmm.
But is he going to do that in the NFL? No. He's a pocket passer in the NFL. He's not going to use his athleticism because he doesn't want to. Like, right? Like, the reason that he didn't run against Michigan is straight up he didn't want to. And that's not a guy who I want to be my quarterback. And, you know, his information processing skills have some question marks associated because, again, every time he opens his mouth, he makes himself look like an idiot. Like,
No disputing that.
Like Vic and Watson are your heroes. Michigan, losing to Michigan doesn't define me. I'm a football player, not a test taker. Shut up. Just shut up. Shut up and go 1 overall. But you can't do that, so you keep talking, and now you're probably
the
going to
good news is an NFL quarterback never has to go in front of the media, right?
Like CJ Stroud needs a lawyer. Just so the lawyer can say we plead the fifth to every question he ever gets. Just shut up.
CJ, call me. I want to be your lawyer.
Shut the F up Friday, CJ. It's every day of the week.
Yeah, that he didn't do himself any favors. I mean, the company tried to throw him like a lifeline and said, hey, some of these scores out there are fake. And he just, he made it very, very clear he didn't do well on that test. Like, dude, stop. What are we doing? What are we doing? But I didn't want him anyway. So, and nor do I want Anthony Richardson, who is, I'm just destined to be, to get someone fired. He's gonna get someone fired.
You can't justify taking Richardson over Jalen Carter because they're both high upside risks, right? Except one was the best player in college football, and one got Florida to 7-5 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you convinced me. Jalen Carter. I mean, Brian's convinced me.
I'm taking Tyree Wilson if he's on the board.
I assume Wilson and Anderson are gone. And
I'm assuming,
I'll take Wilson or Anderson in front of Carter because they're safer and they're good players.
And if they aren't there, I'm taking Devin Witherspoon. And,
I mean that's
playing it safe.
Yeah, he's a good player. I think he'll be a good player.
So the Michigan guys, I mentioned this before we went to the break. I mean, we have seen some consistent buzz about DJ Turner being late. A potential late first rounder, but lately have seen Maize Smith kind of popping up here and there as maybe a first rounder. You think either of those guys gets their name called tonight?
Probably not. I think that they're both solid second rounders. Like Smith is a guy who just doesn't bring enough pass rush, I think, to justify a first round pick. And then, DJ Turner has that combine performance. And he was very good last year, but I think there's a pretty big gap between him and a Witherspoon or a Christian Gonzalez. So yeah, I feel like Michigan will have to wait till tomorrow to hear a guy called.
Yeah, it's a possibility. It depends on what happens with the cornerback board. I kind of been looking through mock drafts to see, and it's really there's just a very direct order, right? And he's like number 4, number 5 in the cornerbacks. So it's like, can you fit 5 cornerbacks into the first round? No. Are there going to be 4 cornerbacks going in the first round? Maybe. It depends on who trades and all that kind of stuff. So, DJ Turner, I'm doing his write-up right now. I was going to post on the blog later this afternoon. He's just such a high floor. And then the ceiling is incredible because if you can put some weight on that guy, that's his problem right now. He just gets pushed around by these, by big receivers. And, the NFL, Michigan is really good at developing their players. So we know that's going to probably be a little bit more uphill than they realize. But I think that some team's going to look and say, like, oh my God, you got a cornerback who can move like that. Like, that's 90% of what you need in a cornerback right there, especially the way that, like, the Amon-Ra St. Browns are just destroying the NFL right now because nobody's got that kind of speed.
My question, is it possible that Mozzie slides to the Lions in round 2?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the question.
I mean, might be if they don't take Jalen Carter, if they do take a corner, I mean, he might be a reasonable pick for them in round 2.
Well, Turner would actually, I mean, if they don't
Or
take
Turner.
Witherspoon, that would be a
Yeah.
reasonable pick for them as well.
I
so.
agree. I agree with that. Yeah,
There's a lot of Deontay Banks buzz out of Maryland around 18. If they don't go corner, so
pick 18. Yeah.
Let's say they do go Jalen Carter at 6,
Mhm.
then Deontay Banks at 18 makes a lot of sense. Another 4-3 guy brings you some size. A lot of post combine buzz with him. Just don't. There are a couple of guys I want you to. Please don't take Bijan Robinson. And I think Bijan Robinson is a great player. I think he's a terrific player. I just don't think it fits what the Lions have to get out of this draft, and that is either surefire starter or rotation guy right now. He's your third string back.
Yeah, it's not a spot of need. Running backs in the first round are,
I mean, I don't think he's going to be there.
Right.
But if he was there with the second pick, I'd be like, he's
second round. Oh, second pick and
the second pick in the first round. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a pass. I'm a hard pass on Bijan Robinson.
I just got to give my shout out real quick to Brett Coleman. That's the dude I listen to about the NFL, and he's got a thing he put out 3 weeks ago on who the Lions should draft, and that's standing up pretty well right now. So just look up Brett Coleman Lions, and you'll get a lot more than we can say.
All right, folks, that'll do it for us here on today's show. MSoftballacademy.org, the Softball Academy this afternoon. Take part. If you can't take part, be sure to donate to Making Strides Against Breast Cancer through the Softball Academy at msoftballacademy.org. We got to get out of here. We'll see you tomorrow on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket, the official voice of University of Michigan Sports, Ann Arbor.